So today I am here with Mr. Moss and I'm going to be interviewing him on a series of events that might have affected or impacted his life. So my first question is, after World War II ended, did it affect your childhood growing up?
Well, I was born right after World War II ended, so it affected my childhood in the sense that my father got out of the Army and came home.
Do you remember the first time you watched TV in color? Were you impressed?
I was, and it was probably sometime in the 1960s. Yeah, that was a big deal.
How did you feel when hippies became popular?
Uh, I thought it was all sort of funny and strange. That was really the drug culture of the 60s, particularly in major cities, and not just San Francisco, but Atlanta, for instance, had a very sort of thriving, lively hippie culture all along Peachtree Street in Midtown.
Did you like how they dressed and how they carried
I thought it was all sort of funny. I'm pretty buttoned down collar prep myself.
Yeah. Why do you think the immigration rate was so low during 1970?
I think probably the economy, the gas shortage, but also the world was in a more stable place than it is right now. I think there weren't as many people fleeing from poverty, from disease, from political problems as there are now.
How did the creation of the first Apple Macintosh affect your work / daily life? Were you able to get your hands on one?
Well, not at first. When we first started using computers in the 1960s, my school in Florida, in order to do the scheduling by computer, they had to drive to Gainesville and use the University of Florida's computer, which was the size of this building. There were no individual laptops or even desktops in those days, so it was really probably in about the mid 80s. I got my first computer here at Darlington in probably about 1984 or 5.
One of the growing environmental concerns during the 1980s was the development of acid rain. Was it a big deal then? It actually was.
Yeah, I think it was a big deal. Again, during particularly among younger people. There are a lot of issues like acid rain, environmental issues, climate change that young people have a tendency to believe in and be more passionate about, and older people have a tendency just to sort of accept it as the way it is. Younger people want to do something about it.
What were the beliefs of what would happen when you went from the 1900s to the 2000s?
Well, the first big fear was that all the computers in the world were going to crash. When it tipped to 2000, there were a lot of folks really worried that there was going to be this massive computer crash because everybody was set on the 1900 dates. They didn't know what would happen, and of course, nothing happened.
Did you enjoy when reality TV game shows became popular?
Well, again, I hate reality TV.
Why is that?
And it has to do with, because it's not reality. It's staged reality or planned reality. So I've just never been a big fan. I'm more a fan of drama, murder mysteries, spy stories, adventure movies, romances, fiction plots appeal to me a whole lot more than For example, I'm a big fan of Outer Banks.
Same.
I watch all of the CSIs. I watch Magnum PI. I watch the Tom Selleck New York police thing on Friday nights, Blue Bloods. So that's the kind of stuff I like rather than reality. Reality's hard enough to deal with anyway.
Yeah.
I like escape.
How did 9/11 impact your way of living and thoughts of traveling?
It was terrifying, and I remember when it happened, I was sitting in this office, and a teacher named Larry Baker, an African-American teacher from Philadelphia, was living in the apartment where Mr. Bell's office is. and he came bursting out of the door, and it just picked up the news on CNN, and everybody went running into his TV.
What was America like after 9/11? What was flying like?
Of course, everybody in America was afraid to fly at that point. And a week later, I was supposed to go to a convention in Texas, the largest college admissions convention in the country. And to fly or not to fly was really a question. And like most of my friends, I decided, no, I'm not going to let this cause me to change my way of life. So I flew to Dallas, Texas, along with several thousand of my other friends, and it was really freaky. The Atlanta airport was virtually empty. There were just very few people around, and of course, in those days, there was no baggage search, no security. If you were going to the airport to see me off, you just walked to the gate with me and waved goodbye through the window, and there were no security guards, no checkpoints or anything. Life was much simpler, and 9/11 totally changed the way the world traveled. The interesting part to me was this empty airport in Atlanta and the empty airport in Dallas, and yet we had a wonderful convention because we were all just determined we were going to keep on with our lives. And then shortly after that, all of the security safeguards made flying a whole lot more complicated than it used to be. It used to be real simple. You just drove to Atlanta, you walked to your gate, you got on the plane.
Okay. What are your thoughts on the Muslim ban that Trump put into place, and do you think it was right? Why or why not?
Well, I think it was stupid. I think it was evil. I think it was mean. I think it goes against everything that people who are Christian claim to believe in, and Trump claims to be Christian. But you don't treat people like that, of any race, religion, or ethnic background, and it just made no sense at all. Yeah, there are good Muslims and bad Muslims, and there are good white people and bad white people, and good Americans and bad Americans. I mean, you don't just banish people because you don't agree with their religion. I thought it was one of the most anti-American things he did, and I thought it was a violation of the Constitution.
What do you think classifies someone as an American?
First of all, anyone born in this country is an American by law, regardless of whether that student came here legally or illegally. If you come here illegally and you have a child, that child's an American. And I think an American is someone who believes in the Constitution and who believes everything America is supposed to stand for. And I'm sort of appalled at the number of people who claim to be American, and yet they do things that are totally against everything that our Constitution stands for.
How do you feel about the war in Ukraine? Do you believe that Putin had a valid reason for invading Ukraine?
Of course he didn't. He was just greedy. He had no reason whatsoever to invade Ukraine. He's simply trying to rebuild the old Soviet Union. I think it's appalling. It's awful. It's war crimes. And what he's done to the Ukrainian people is just unconscionable. I think in retrospect, the NATO countries and the U.S. should have put up a fight when he first invaded Crimea. That's a part of Ukraine. And about 5 or 6 years ago, he invaded Crimea. And the world just sat back and let him get away with it. And I think at that point we should have put up a fight. And if we had, I don't think this would be going on now. I don't know what the solution is. I'm like everybody else. I'm terrified if you fight Russia, you start a nuclear war. But on the other hand, how long do you just let Putin continue to seize other countries and kill other people who've done nothing wrong?
How do you feel about the new advancements in cars during this generation? For example, an electric car compared to cars during the 1900s.
Oh, I think it's huge. I think the future of electric cars is going to just revolutionize the auto industry. It'll be much more energy efficient. It will pretty much eliminate the dependence on gas and oil, which will make the United States more energy sufficient. So yeah, I think it's pretty exciting, and to read that some of the new electric cars can go from 0 to 60 in 4 or 5 seconds. I think the biggest problem will be the building a battery that will hold a charge long enough to let you take a 500-mile trip instead of having to stop every hour or two and recharge.
What was your favorite genre of music back in the day?
Back in the day, Motown.
Motown?
Yeah, Four Tops, the Supremes, the Temptations, Maurice Williams and the Zodiacs, everything from Motown in Detroit.
Did you ever listen to Elvis Presley?
Yeah.
Michael Jackson?
Yes.
That's good.
Michael Jackson in the 80s and Elvis Presley in the 50s and 60s.
Did you drink any sorts of alcohol growing up, or were you against it?
Well, it was very easy for me because when I was growing up, life was simpler. It was legal to drink at 18. The day I turned 18, I registered for the draft. I registered to vote, and I could buy alcohol. So the whole time I was in college, it was perfectly legal for me to drink. And it wasn't the big issue it is today. And I think in many ways it was much healthier. People didn't have to hide to drink, and they didn't binge drink the way they do now on college campuses.
How do you feel about the Georgia governor, Brian Kemp, signing a bill that allows guns to be carried without a license?
I think it's one of the dumbest ideas I've ever heard. If we're concerned about the rise in violence, particularly killings by guns, I can't think of anything more insane.
Do you think crime rates will rise?
Yeah. I think crime will rise. I think there'll be more shootings. I think it was just a stupid idea to appeal to Trump's base to try to make him seem like the real conservative of the rednecks and the gun toters.
How has COVID-19 affected your life? Did you follow all of the protocols, or did you oppose them?
Oh, I followed every one of the protocols. To me, it was just a no-brainer. As children, we get vaccinated before we go to the first grade for smallpox and chicken pox and whooping cough. I mean, those are all vaccinations we had to have in infancy. Polio. I had all those shots before I ever started school. So why would we resist a shot?
Did you get the vaccine yet?
Oh yes, I've had both vaccines and 2 boosters. So I've had every one I can possibly get.